All right, so we're back and we're talking about the player that we've all been waiting for, Broderick Martin, and what's going to be happening with him here relatively soon. So with the loss of Marcus Davenport for the year and the return of the prodigal son, Broderick Martin, the 2023 third-round selection, Broderick Martin, should be coming back very soon. Now he will be back to the defensive line, which will give this Lions team a little bit more flexibility and some big-time reinforcements. Now, should the Lions want to utilize Levi Onwuzurike, on the outside of the defensive line more often, along with Josh Pascal, this is an option for the Lions when he does come back. Now, Martin did suffer a hyperextension in the team's preseason finale against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And after the game, Dan Campbell really didn't have a timeline or update really on his injury, but he seemed to indicate it wasn't too serious. He did quote himself as saying this, that looks like a little hyperextension there. I don't think it's anything long-term, but enough to be sore for a little bit here, is what Dan Campbell said. Now, if you guys remember, the Detroit Lions had really planned to place the IR to return tag on John Kaminsky. And after a bit of roster gymnastics, if you will, to kind of get the roster down to 53, and ultimately, which was kind of a head-scratcher, right? The move was down to 52 players to meet the NFL roster deadline. And the NFL really, they kind of had this new rule, right? That allows players to be placed on the IR to return tag as part of the 53-man roster cutdowns. But any other players who a team wants to place on IR to return must make and stay on the 53-man roster for at least one full business day. Kind of weird, I know, but it is what it is. Rules are rules. Now, one of the more surprising moves, right? This whole roster gymnastics thing that went on during this week was placing that tag on the second-year defensive tackle, Broderick Martin, and then removing it from John Kaminsky, which meant Kaminsky was on the roster, and then he was later placed on IR following that full business day after the initial cutdown day. Now, here we are. It's week 5, right? Lions are on a bye. Broderick Martin is clear to come back. He can be activated at any time and brought back to the team. He, of course, will have up to 3 weeks to be brought back, right? 3 weeks to go through practices, to be activated. And once that window starts, there's no shutting it down. Once it starts, you can't stop it. Martin's got to be elevated or he's going to have to be regressed back to IR for the rest of the season. Now, the one thing we do know about the Lions and the injuries is that in situations like this, not all the time do the Lions have to go through the full 3 weeks. It's actually been kind of a rare occasion over the last season or so that, they bring a player back and it's like, bang, they're ready to go. Within a week, they bring them back and they're ready to go. So I'm expecting the same thing is about to happen here with DJ Reader. Little birdies are telling me, some sources are telling me that Broderick Martin is on his way. With the Lions suffering that major loss to Marcus Davenport, though, and seemingly looking for options, I guess a better depth behind DJ Reader, I guess would be the case here. And especially at nose tackle. We don't really have another big-time nose tackle. Now, Martin's presence on the field adds that versatility, adds that nose tackle size. But the versatility to what the Lions can do schematically here, that is the bigger play. So once he returns, the Lions are going to have so much more options with this defensive front line. And I'm going to give you a couple here towards the end of this video. I'm going to give you a couple of things to think about that I think you're going to like. So I'd like to know in the comments below, one, are you excited about Broderick Martin? So he was showing quite a bit during the preseason. So let me know in the comments, are you excited to see what Broderick Martin's going to bring to the table? He went through some things this offseason that really transformed his body. We'll talk about some of that here in a minute too. But, here's a kid drafted out of Western Kentucky. And there's kind of like a flurry of draft day moves, right? Brad Holmes doing his thing, always doing his thing, trading up, trading down, staying fluid on draft day. But some fans didn't quite understand what in the world is Broderick Martin doing getting drafted in the 3rd round. And just Googling his name, looking for some news, right? I found it kind of funny. So you see some certain thumbnails out there calling him a wasted pick, or then backtracking and saying that Martin was a giant leap loading, like a giant leap in his 2nd year. He's going to have a really big year, or that then the Lions' nastiness is on full display, and Broderick Martin wants to prove the nastiness. So I'm like really confused because these certain individuals or individual constantly shredded the pick for Broderick Martin and Brad Holmes. But kind of weird. You call the guy a bust. You call it a wasted pick. You say Brad Holmes a bust and a wasted pick on Broderick Martin and others. But then you turn around and say that it's not. I'm really confused. But calling him a bust or calling Brad Holmes making a big mistake is kind of the same thing he said about DJ Reader, the same thing he said about Marcus Davenport. And the list goes on. But then you turn around and you say that it wasn't. I just don't get it. So I don't know if it's the fans that are at fault here, if they're listening to some garbage. Just like saying Matthew Betts, was a huge mistake to bring into the Detroit Lions this offseason. You wanted certain defensive ends or whatever. So Matthew Betts was a huge mistake to bring in. And then cutting him. And then after losing Davenport, comes out and says, Holmes really screwed up again. You should have kept Matthew Betts. When you never wanted Matthew Betts on this team. You said it was a giant problem, a giant mistake. Now, those of us that understand, what was going on here with the Broderick Martin draft, we knew that he was drafted with the understanding that he was a developmental project. Very big project, maybe even a multi-year project. I don't think that anybody stood up on their soapbox and said, man, this guy's going to start day one and he is going to be the best defensive tackle in the league day one. Hell, he's even going to be a top 32, tackle in year one. No, nobody said that. Not one person. What I saw personally was a very raw 6'5", 330-pound man. That these types of players don't come around very often. And not only do they not come around very often, but when they can actually move, like he does, that is a very rare commodity in the NFL. Very, very rare. So some people just don't understand ball, right? They don't have, they can't see through the trees, if you will, or they just don't have the talent eye, or the eye for the talent, the eye for the game. They just don't have it. And I can't do anything about that, but that's okay. Not all of us can do it. Otherwise, it would just kind of make this skill of being a talent evaluator or a scout in the NFL, or even just an analyst, an analyst on ESPN or wherever you watch them. It would make those positions a watered down market, for the NFL. If you kind of get what I'm trying to say here, it's like, we don't come a dime a dozen. There's very few people that can get, a lot of things right, whether it's draft picks to a certain team or picking games or where draft picks are going to end up in their career or how they're going to, progress throughout a season. I mean, all of that stuff comes from time on task, right? It's something that Dan Campbell talks about all the time. And Broderick Martin is no different to that. He also needs time on task. And to be able to identify these types of players way before they've had an opportunity to prove themselves up against NFL talent takes a special eye. It takes someone that's been there, done that, spends the time reviewing tape and watching all the little intricacies, that these players put on the field, right? As far as, their gameplay and what separates them. But Martin went through a very, big time body transformation. And this is something that we expected, when you have a very raw athlete that has the size and the gift that he does with his size and some of his speed. I mean, to be honest with you, he moves a lot better than he should at his size. Carried a lot of baby fat, baby, whatever you want to call it. Baby fat is what I call it, into the league. He went through this transformation this offseason where he kind of cut out a lot of the baby fat, firmed up, gained some muscle, and started to prove himself, during this preseason, that he had the ability to go the distance and playing almost 100% of all the defensive snaps during the preseason. And then his injury happened versus the Steelers. So then Martin kind of, is getting put back into the fold, or when he's back into the fold, I should say, the Lions can really opt to utilizing Levi Onwuzurike on the outside a little bit more and going a little bit smaller even on the outside when DJ Reader and Martin are both inserted in the game at the same time. So just imagine for a moment. You have 3 tackles in the game. Ali McNeil, DJ Reader, Broderick Martin. You got those 3 down linemen, stuffing the lanes. This really allows for a free rusher on the outside, whether it's a linebacker or Aiden Hutchinson. Because I don't know a team out there that is not going to be able to, or not have to, double team DJ Reader, double team Broderick Martin, and you probably should double team Ali McNeil. Who's going to be able to give up 6 assets to 3 guys? Nobody. You're probably going to have to double team DJ. Let's just say you leave Broderick Martin alone. Okay. And then you double team Ali McNeil. Well, there's 5 assets on 3 guys still. So you still have Aiden Hutchinson and a linebacker or another defensive end if you go 5 heavy on the front, that you have to account for. But then let's think about it one more, wrinkle further here. What if you go 4 down linemen and you've got Levi O added to the mix now? And Levi O has already proven that he's much quicker than, some of your defensive tackles out there. So if you have Levi O, Ali McNeil, DJ Reader, and Broderick Martin all up on the line, and then Aiden Hutchinson, and then Josh Pascal, and you go with 6 strong, no one's going to be able to touch that. You start working this, you know, in the red zone. You start working this on the goal line. Hopefully they're not in the goal line, but if you've got them backed up and you go 6 strong with 5 DBs, no linebackers, maybe 1 linebacker and 4 DBs or 2 linebackers and 3, whatever, no one's going to be able to stop that. And this is what having a guy like Broderick Martin is going to be able to help you do. Not only is he going to be able to give DJ Reader, you know, some opportunity to get a breath, right? But he's also going to allow this defense schematically to do a lot of things much differently than what we've seen before. We haven't seen this stuff yet. We've only seen a very small, minute amount of what this defense is capable of doing. And I just find it funny, you know, and I don't really mean to pick on people, but I just find it funny when I see all of these negative takes, you know, for blowhards, I guess is what I call them. People that just run their mouth and don't really have a clue as to what they're, you know, what they're saying. You haven't even seen it yet. You haven't seen what this defense is capable of doing. And I think what we've already seen is with Terrell Williams and just DJ Reader alone, I mean, gave Aiden Hutchinson his best sack day ever. Just having him that day. We didn't even need another end. We didn't need Marcus Davenport. We just needed a defensive tackle. So imagine for a moment when we have all of these players healthy on the field together, there's not another team out there that has these type of weapons, offensively and defensively. Brad Holmes has put together one of the most skilled defensive lines and offensive rosters, if you will, that I've ever seen. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when Broderick. So Broderick Martin coming back. The story is it'll be less than 3 weeks that the time is starting to tick. They're ready for him to come back. Clearly the Lions need, you know, something here with depth. They need, you know, some more opportunity here on the defensive line, and they're going to get it. The way to the quarterback is through the interior pass rush or in through the interior defensive line. It is not on the exterior of your defensive line. I don't care who gets the stats. The reason why they get the stats is because the interior of the defensive line is crushing the can. The defensive end is working his way down, right? That's why it's working. It's not because we need 2 all-star defensive ends. No, you just need someone from the middle to be able to break that chain link. And once that chain is broke, the whole offensive line collapses. And that's what you're seeing with DJ Reader, right? And you're starting to see it with Levi O. Imagine what another 330-pound lineman is going to do to this offensive line that DJ Reader is going to help him do. So I'm super excited about it. Look for Broderick Martin to be back here very soon. So timetable, there is none. But from what I understand, it's going to be sooner rather than later. It'll be announced soon whether they're going to, you know, unleash him and start that 3-week clock. But we're not expecting that it's going to take 3 weeks. I know that Dan Campbell said something last week that he wasn't quite ready yet. But again, I will throw this back to you. The Lions don't always start a clock and finish a clock. They start it and then the guy's ready to go like same week. So just look out for that. Broderick Martin on his way back. Reinforcements on the way to the Detroit Lions defensive line. Broderick Martin, we'll see you soon, buddy. Go One Pride, go Detroit Lions. We'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.